In the crumbling archives of ancient China, buried among forbidden scrolls and half-burned chronicles, there are whispers of a figure with the face of a panther, a shadow in the emperor's court, cloaked in secrets and sorcery. His name is barely mentioned, his origins uncertain. One thing is certain, as the once great Shang Empire crumbled, a figure from the edges rose, accelerating the collapse of an already doomed dynasty. This is where his story begins. Welcome to the Jade Archive. Deep within the shadow-veiled Forgotten Vale, where jagged peaks tore at the sky and ancient trees whispered long-lost secrets, the tragic story of Sargon began, not with glory, but with cruelty. From birth, Sargon and his family bore the curse of panther-like faces so strange and fearsome that humans mocked and despised them. Calling them Yagwei labeled them monsters. They were shunned, their presence met with sneers and stones. One fateful day, while Sargon's father was away hunting to protect their home, human hunters descended from the ridgelines. Driven by fear and hatred of what they didn't understand, they surrounded the den under cover of mist and silence. Sargon, still just a cub, hid in the shadows as his mother fought to defend him. But the numbers were too great. She was captured, then killed before his eyes. Her screams, raw and defiant, echoed through the valley, a sound he would carry with him forever. The earth was stained with loss that day, and in that moment, something in Sargon broke. When his father returned, scarred but too late, he found only ruin. Grief-stricken, he vowed to prepare Sargon for a merciless world. "Our faces mark us as enemies," he warned, "only the strong survive." Under his father's harsh guidance, Sargon's childhood became a crucible shaping a soul tempered for revenge. As the years passed, Sargon trained under his father's watchful eye, honing his strength, his instincts, and his will to survive in a world that had already taken so much from him. Far beyond their hidden valley, high above the clouds, rose Kangrim Peak, the seat of the legendary Ether Hall, a realm steeped in ancient magic and divine intrigue. It echoed with the grandeur of myth, just like Asgard of the Old Norse tales. There, spirits, monsters, and immortal elites clashed for power and pride. And though Sargon knew nothing of it yet, the storm that would link his path to theirs was already stirring. At its head stood Grandmaster Celestial, long rumored to favor the noble and beautiful. To silence critics and protect his image of fairness, he staged a dramatic gesture, descending into the despised Forgotten Vale to select Sargon. The Panther faced outcast as his next apprentice. To the world, it was a move of virtue. In truth, it was political theater. Sargon wasn't chosen out of compassion, but as proof of Celestial's supposed righteousness. Yet, to Sargon, it felt like a miracle. After a life of mockery and exile, he saw the gesture as acceptance. He hoped that he was finally seen for who he was, not what he looked like. As he climbed to Ether Hall, he thought his suffering had ended. What he didn't see was the truth. This was not a rescue, but a performance, and he was cast not as hero, but as symbol. Upon his arrival at Ether Hall, Sargon carried more than just the scars of exile. He carried a heart swollen with hatred for the human world that had mocked his face and butchered his mother. Yet for a brief moment, he believed that this place, this sanctum of spirits and ancient power, might calm the storm inside him. Perhaps here, among beings who are not human, he could finally shed the burden of vengeance and become something more. The Celestials welcomed him with open arms, but never open trust. While they preached peace and urged him to release his hatred for the human world, they sent him to do the tasks no one else would: cleansing corrupted temples, silencing rogue spirits, executing in the name of order. "Let go," they said. "You can't rise while clinging to the past." Yet they offered no path upward. Whenever Sargon petitioned for recognition, pleaded that his years of loyalty and sacrifice had earned him a place among the celestial ranks, he was denied. Always the same answer: your heart still carries hatred for the human world. No honors, no promotion, only more blood. Years passed, and slowly, the fire of human vengeance cooled. The pain of his mother's death dulled into memory, no longer ruling him. But the bitterness did not vanish, shifted. What had once burned for humanity now simmered toward the very beings who claimed to guide him. The storm was quieter now. But it had not passed. It had simply changed direction. The final insult came when Zaya, another apprentice of the Grand Master Celestial, was chosen for a sacred mission to descend into the mortal realm and retrieve an ancient artifact said to restore balance to the human world, a world now rotting under the rule of King Zhou. Once a proud sovereign, Zhou had fallen under the thrall of Daji, a fox enchantress, cloaked in mortal beauty. Twisting his mind with illusions and desire, Daji turned the emperor into a vessel of madness. Zhou began sacrificing his own people, burning them alive, skinning them as offerings to false gods in exchange for power and gold. But everyone knew the truth. The gods had long stopped listening. The emperor was no longer a ruler, but a butcher draped in silk. Sargon wanted that mission not out of ambition, but out of purpose. After years of training, meditation, and solitary discipline, he had shed the hatred that once defined him. He had achieved something close to peace, and with that peace came a desire to prove to Grandmaster Celestial that he was no longer driven by rage, but by something higher. But there was a second reason. One even he dared not speak aloud. Sargon needed to see the world again, the world that had once tried to erase him. He needed to stand in it, walk among the ruins, and judge for himself. Was it worth saving? Could he be more than what he looked like? Could the panther-faced outcast become a guardian of balance? He believed that if he could bring peace to the realm of men, then perhaps, just perhaps, his own story could become proof that even the most reviled among them could rise as a saint. But that belief shattered when the Grand Master overlooked him once more. All the years of silence, of discipline, of hope had meant nothing. And so, Sargon turned his back on either hall. Wrapped in the folds of his black cloak, he descended Kangren Peak into the broken world below. But this time, it was not with vengeance in his heart. It was with judgment. Sargon's journey from Ether Hall brought him down from the sacred heights of Kangren Peak into the heart of the mortal world, the world he once hoped to save. But as his feet touched the blood-soaked soil of the Sung Empire, any lingering illusions crumbled. The land was a wasteland of fear and fire. Villages smoldered. Crops were salted and burned. The skies hung heavy with smoke and screams. At the center of it all sat King Zhou, a hollow-eyed ruler, enthralled by Daji, a fox spirit wrapped in mortal beauty. Her sorcery had twisted his mind beyond repair. It was not power, it was wrought masquerading as divinity. And Sargon saw it clearly. This was no longer about proving his worth or earning a place among the righteous. The balance he once sought to restore had never existed. The human world, left to its own devices, would always devour itself. Perhaps the Grand Master had seen it too and merely played his role in the farce. But now, Sargon would play his, not with rage, but with resolve. He stepped into the heart of the empire. He approached the palace not as a servant or a savior, but as an instrument of judgment. His cloak trailed ash. His eyes burned colder than ever. With his dark magic and sharpened will, he would reshape what remained. And if the world insisted on calling him a monster, he would answer. Sargon entered King Zhou's decaying court like a shadow long awaited. The once great palace reeked of incense and scorched flesh, its air thick with the stench of desperation. Servants knelt with hollow eyes, and Daji watched from behind the veil of her beauty, her gaze amused but alert. The Mad King slumped on his throne, crowned in delusion and soaked in blood. But Sargon came not to mock or rage, he came to inform. He brought news from the mountains. Zaya, the chosen disciple of Grand Master Celestial, was descending from Kangren Peak. His mission was clear: to retrieve an ancient artifact powerful enough to restore balance to the fractured world. That artifact, in the hands of Zaya and the Celestials, would tip the scales. Once retrieved, it would serve as a divine endorsement for change. The Celestials would move swiftly, stripping Zhou of his throne, declaring his reign over, and installing a ruler of their own choosing, someone more controllable, more in line with their sacred doctrine. This was not just a spiritual mission. It was a political maneuver, master's prophecy. Sargon laid out the implications with cold precision. If Zaya succeeded, the Song Empire would be overthrown not by rebellion, but by celestial appointed authority. And Zhou, long derided as a mad king, would vanish into a footnote traced, not just from power, but from history. But there was still time to act. Sargon advised the king to escalate the human sacrifices. Perhaps the scale had been too small. A grander offering, an empire-wide rite, might finally pierce the silence of the heavens. Entire cities could become altars. The capital itself, a beacon of agony. In that torrent of death and devotion, the gods might finally answer Zoe's plea, not to judge him, but to empower him. To the king, it was a revelation. To Daji, it was poetry, and to Sargon it was strategy. He would not stop Zaya with blades or curses. He would drown him in prophecy, and turn the empire's madness into a weapon of delay and misdirection. What balance is there to restore if the human world is already reduced to ash? As the armies of Zaya the Seer swept across the burning plains of the Song Empire, Sargon did not stand among King Zoe's warlords. He did not lead battalions of demons, nor did he cast the first spell. He watched from the shadows of a crumbling spire overlooking the battlefield. Sargon observed the chaos unfold like a play written in fire and blood. Below, King Zo's fanatical soldiers clashed with the radiant host of the Vesvant realm. Daji stood near the king, her illusion already beginning to fray, revealing glimpses of the fox sorceress beneath. Zaya led the charge, the sacred artifact burning bright in his hands, every step of his advance a defiance of darkness. Sargon's cloak curled around him like smoke. He had no loyalty to Zhou, who had only ever used his pain as spectacle. No love for Zai, who had basked in the Celestials' favor while Sargon was left to rot. Let them kill each other, he thought. Let the holy and the damned destroy one another. Then, from the ashes, I will decide what worlds should be reborn. But something stirred beneath the soil, something that Sargon had buried deep and long ignored. In choosing not to fight, he had unleashed more than strategy. The rituals he taught to Zhou, blood sacrifices meant to summon power, had awakened something older than gods. The balance had tipped too far. As Zaya's artifact clashed against Zhou's corrupted magic, a rift tore open in the heart of the battlefield. Not divine, not demonic. Something else, a raw void of entropy, born not from any single spell, but from Sargon's very intent, vengeance without end. And it began to consume everything. Winds howled with voices that did not belong to this world. Screams rose from both armies as the ground collapsed beneath them, pulling bodies and magic into the abyss. Even Zaya stumbled, the artifact flickering in his hand. Sargon smiled. This is justice, he thought. Let it all be forgotten. But as the void reached for him too, he realized the truth he had refused to see. He was not outside this world. He was not separate from the balance. He was part of what he wanted to destroy. And in destroying it, he had summoned the very thing that demanded his end as well. He tried to flee, to cast a ward, but the magic recoiled. The darkness he had once commanded now saw him only as fuel. He was the first it consumed. Even the void, it seemed, chose to swallow the monster before all others. When the rift finally closed, silence fell. The battlefield was scarred, but not destroyed. Zaya still stood wounded, but alive. King Zhou was gone. Dagi's illusions had vanished like mist at dawn. And of Sargon, there was no trace. Only a scorched circle on the stone where Shadow had stood. No statue would bear his name. No song would mourn him. Thank you for watching today's episode. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the tale. I am the librarian of the Jade Archive, guardian of stories long forgotten and truths half remembered. Within these halls, we uncover urban legends, local folklore, and hidden strands of mythology that still haunt the edges of our modern world. Until next time, stay curious and never stop listening to the whispers between the pages.